I want to talk about why the US Supreme Court is brain dead, okay? Welcome back to the dystopia of modern day AI and the future projections that we are looking at. Now, in my last video, I kind of went over Australia pausing rules for implementing guardrails for high-risk AI applications and why this is such a terrible, terrible idea. And a lot of people are saying, you know, you should make a part 2 about this. So we're going to be diving into an element of my last video that I didn't really go into detail enough about, I feel like. Now, this was, of course, Anthropic winning a key US ruling on AI training in author's copyright lawsuit. And what is this? Well, this is actually to do with the fact that Anthropic won by basically saying they were making fair use of books that they were training on. Now, of course, they did still pirate all their books, so they're still facing copyright allegations and basically piracy. But that's an entirely different matter. We're not going to be talking about this for now. They're still potentially going to be losing that. Apparently, they might even basically go bankrupt. But we're going to be talking about the fair use ruling that they got. And this is from the actual case, right? Now, I wanted to talk about this because it's so frustrating to me. We have the US Supreme Court essentially ruling about and saying that the fact that AI training is going on and it is basically able to produce new products that are inherently sort of derivative. And we're going to talk about why that isn't really the case. So we're saying that basically because a human can memorize things and can calculate sort of connection between different things, hence it's inherently fair use that Anthropic gets to farm basically the entirety of the US books to allow for generating of other material. Now, from the report itself, they even have experts coming in and saying that basically LLMs memorize a lot. Like a lot. And this is in all caps, okay? A lot in all caps. And I want to show you just how much they actually do memorize, because they really do memorize a lot. Now, they actually recognize this. They actually recognize this in the report, in the court documents, and they even comment on it later. And they say basically if someone were to read all the modern day classics because of their exceptional expression, memorize them and then emulate them to the best of their writing, would that violate the Copyright Act? Of course not. And I feel like this is just such a strike to the heart in how serious they are in saying like, of course not. Like, how could you even think that that wasn't the case? It infuriates me. So let's see an example of this. And you tell me if this is fair use, okay? This is from the New York Times. Now, New York Times sued ChatGPT, GPT-4 over the fact that basically a lot of the material was basically appearing in GPT's like generated things. Like it was just showing up in things. Now, this doesn't exactly apply to Claude because apparently Claude has preventative measures in place on the kind of post end of things. And these kind of detect whether or not there's copyright material being printed. So it will kind of not do that. But that's not really what I want to talk about because the lawsuit as well is based on the input, not the output. But in order to understand the input, we do need to look at the output. We need to look at what the model is actually capable of memorizing. So this is from New York Times. This is crazy, okay? This is crazy. It remembers this entire wall of text. It prints it out verbatim, pretty much. Like we have a few words here that are missing that are not the same. And this is literally like hundreds of pages of literally just copy pasted stuff that the model has memorized and is printing out. I mean, look at this. This is a full wall of text that it remembers. Now, the US Supreme Court essentially argues that, well, if someone were to read all of this because of their exceptional expression, you know, blah, 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 would it violate the Copyright Act that they can memorize a decent amount of things? Of course not. Well, here's the thing, okay? Seriously, can a human memorize all this stuff? There is no possible way. I mean, look at this. Look at this. How can a human memorize all this stuff verbatim? Verbatim. I mean, how can you even have that as an argument? These things cannot be tolerated in the same category. It's a completely different category. This model can literally, on command, bring up entire articles for you to just see. Like, how is this fair use? I obviously understand the argument that they're saying, which is basically that, you know, if this was a human, but I'm like already there, I'm like, well, it isn't a human. It isn't a human. Like, obviously it is a human that is doing these things to train up this model or whatever. But you have a kind of agent that is kind of functioning independently of the humans at this point. You know, the humans set this thing up, they train it, and then it kind of goes. And we should be looking at it from the perspective of, well, what can this thing have as capabilities? We need certain laws to basically allow these things to be treated within the kind of human sphere as different entities, because it's not a human. It's not a human. So how can it be fair use? Now, the dangerous part about this is, as we can see right now, that they are exporting these things. So we know based on the human laws that we can prosecute them because we can see their works. However, I think the more important thing to look at is that the models themselves are capable of doing this. That's really the important part about this, because things will change. These companies are going to be having less and less slip-ups as these things get caught, as these things get called out. Even Anthropic has a system which is designed to catch copyright works from getting basically out, but it doesn't change the fact that it's on the in. It's inside the model already. This is the part that's dangerous, and this is the part that we need to kind of look at, because it doesn't change the fact whether or not it's exporting this material. It doesn't change the fact that this is basically an entity that is kind of untreated within the current sphere of rulings that is allowed to propagate. For example, here we have the Stanford AI lab blog. This is the actual Stanford. They're talking about, well, what can we do about it? Because it's a problem, right? The fact that this stuff is getting out, and it's so backwards, because we're looking at this and it's like, the problem is this stuff is getting out. The problem isn't that these models are able to do these things. We have things that are coming out, and it's like, okay, well, we need to make these things less because these things are coming out. But we're not looking at the fact that, okay, well, these things coming out are evidence of the fact that these things are coming in, the fact that these models can essentially just look at all this data and are basically being prosecuted on a human brain, which is not the same at all. And this is obviously screwed up. We have to have a different regulation for it, because it doesn't make sense to treat it in the form of humans. It doesn't operate in the same form of humans. Humans can't remember all this stuff. And I love how they say here as well, the US Supreme Court says, as sort of like a concluding note, final nail in the coffin, really just, hitting it home hard. In short, the purpose and character of using copyrighted works to train LLMs to generate new text was quintessentially transformative, baby. It hurts so much to hear that. Oh my God. Dude, how? It's so backwards. It doesn't make sense to call it transformative. Yeah, it's transforming things, and obviously there is a human that has made this thing that is essentially doing this stuff, but this is an action that is basically kind of being void in this entire argument. Imagine, in even 5 years in the future, the way things are going right now, if there is a thing that is insanely intelligent, right? And it just knows every single thing about every single person. How are we going to treat this thing as a person? How is it possible to look at that and be like, oh yeah, we have to treat it with human laws? No, we can't treat it with human laws. It's inherently not human. We can't look at this and be like, oh, well, just because a human built this creature, it's transformative. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, if you are normally here for my music, stick around, because I'm actually working on songs that have a direct relationship to this, because I feel so strongly about this. And that's next up. That's coming very, very soon. But again, I just want to cover this. I want to go in more detail about this, because I think it's so important to really drive this point home. Let me know if I should keep talking about this. I don't even know if I should keep talking about this, but I feel like it's such an important thing that we need to be talking about now. Yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Leave a like, share this with people who you think may be interested. Check out my songs, and screw AI, baby. Hashtag screw AI. I want to burn it all down, baby. I want to burn it all down. Hey.